Okay, it's time to say censorship has gone too far. The woke let. No, wait, hold on. No, wait. I'm not an idiot. Um, okay, let's talk about Crocodile Dundee, the new 4K that's come out, the encore cut, which is already an interesting thing to know that that movie has had several different releases in general, because the Australian release was initially longer by like 6 odd minutes. Then there's an American cut which is shorter. There's a European cut. There's a lot of cuts of this movie to begin with. But it's been recently remastered on 4K, titled The Encore Cut. To my knowledge, it is the extended version of the film, bar about a minute or so. Um, and ironically, that minute or so isn't like just stuff that isn't like appropriate for an American audience or stuff that wasn't initially in the American version, but instead is just stuff for what one would consider not appropriate for a modern audience. You know, a modern audience would frown upon it. Mick Dundee has a scene where he grabs a trans person and ridicules them for not being the gender that they're presenting themselves as. There's the scene, the infamous scene where he whips out a knife that's gigantic in contrast to a mugger whilst on, like, I think he's in New York, the streets of New York, whatever, and has the infamous line of "that's not a knife, this is a knife," and then slashes the guy, and the guy runs away. They've cut that out now, so now it starts. I don't even know if they have that line in it anymore. It just has the guys running away. His Australian prowess is so scary that people with a literal knife just run away. See, it doesn't work. Now, look, there's already an argument that this is a bad thing in general, and it is. You shouldn't censor a movie whether it shows that the character is a piece of shit or not. You know, like if in modern audiences, oh look, Mick Dundee is like a racist, a homophobic, transphobic piece of shit. He always was, and we should retain that kind of information that he was. It's a type of person that existed, and to some degree still exists now, but it was a popular stereotype and a popular characterization of someone. It's a character. It's, again, much like with French Connection, removing the scene where Gene Hackman's character says the N-word, referring to, you know, African-American people, because he's a racist cop. Removing that scene and that line of dialogue makes it more ambiguous as to whether or not he's a racist cop, even though his actions still fucking show it. But it's like, that line of dialogue is pivotal. So removing it, bad. Now, ironically, the fact that they've cut out these scenes in this 4K release of the film, which has made a lot of people angry, especially those who actually like the film and those who, you know, watched it when it came out, understand its, like, cultural significance as an Australian film, whatever, and want to watch it in an untainted light, they're the ones who are very pissed off about it. Me, as someone who I could give a take having the film, like, it's an iconic Australian film, it wouldn't be a bad film to have in the collection just as hey, it's a, you know, pivotal piece of Australian history. Like, you can't just dispose of it because the main character's a piece of shit. Because, there's another great Australian film where all the characters, except for the main character, is a piece of shit, and this is Wake and Fright. And Wake and Fright was recently remastered beautifully on 4K by Umbrella, and that doesn't censor a single thing, including the fact that you can't actually, I don't think you can still release it in France, because they kill kangaroos in the movie, actively, because kangaroos, especially at the time, were considered pests. I'm pretty sure they still are considered pests in a lot of local areas, and it's just okay to hunt them because you can. Also, you eat them because it's meat. I've had kangaroo meat. It's fine. And it's just one of those things of, like, if a film like that, which involves a lot of men who are cruel, unbearing people, all mostly caricatures, but also very much a, you know, quite a depiction of country-type Australian life. And trust me, I know, because I did a video essay on this film and how it's a good example of toxic masculinity. And I had a lot of comments from a lot of guys saying, no, these guys are good guys. I'm like, no, they're not. If you think these people are good role model type people, then you're the problem, because they're not good people. But that's the point. You know, it's this middle to upper class, you know, British teacher who happens to go to this one town on the way to a different town to see his partner, and he never gets to see his partner in it because he gets stuck in Bunda Yabba, I believe it's called. Welcome to the Yabba. Very Aussie, beautiful film. And he gets entangled with a lot of people who are just not good people in general. They're very abusive to men and women alike, especially the women. They're very racially problematic. They're very just generally shit people, you know? But at the same time, it's a good conflict of interest. Hey, here's a person who's not like that getting mixed up with people who are like that, and how, like, a culture of a place can influence a person. It's a very good character study. It's a very good, just, like, it's not a encapsulation of all of Australia, but of outback towns, yeah, sure, why not? But also, it's fiction. It's a movie, you know? Maybe people aren't like that, but hey, for the point of drama and for the point of a good story, you can do that, because that's just kind of how that works sometimes. It's a magical thing that fictional narratives can pull off. Nevertheless, it's a really interesting fact that Wake and Fright wasn't censored at all, you know, in contrast to Crocodile Dundee. I'm like, what's the fucking point of censoring Crocodile Dundee, where in Wake and Fright you see how nasty these people are? And to be fair, if you censored that film got rid of all the nastiness, you'd realise that there's like maybe 20 minutes of a runtime left. There wouldn't be much of a movie to go for, because it's part of the movie, inherent in its fucking, like, film grain, that these characters are bad people, and that you shouldn't relate to them because they're bad people. But that doesn't mean it's a bad film. It's a film with conflict in it. It's, you know, and that's also a thing that is crazy, that audiences will get upset that they can't relate to the bad people in a movie, because you're not meant to sometimes. You're just meant to experience something as, oh wow, this is kind of vile. But the film is a great encapsulation of that, and the film does itself justice in how it discusses this kind of a topic, and how it represents this kind of a topic. It's a very interesting film. But again, with Crocodile Dundee, I think it's because of the fact that Dundee himself is meant to be and represent this heroic type of the outback Aussie who's friends with the natives, and he's good with the Sheilas, even though I'm pretty sure in some scenes he's not. But I don't know. I haven't seen it for quite a long time, because it's not readily available, despite how it kind of is. I don't know. I've never actively sought out a DVD copy. Haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I still remember a good portion of it, and I don't think I ever saw the sequel, which is probably a good thing. Even though the sequel wasn't cut. The sequel, which also got a 4K release, is like just the regular version, at least to my knowledge, which is kind of curious. So it's interesting to me that they've recut Crocodile Dundee to make it seem like he's not a bad guy. Like, the thing is, heroic values and characters change over time, no matter what. There will be, like, a heroic buccaneer film of, like, the 40s and 50s where the hero will kill the villain, and then he'll, you know, make out with the girl who never really liked him, but has grown to like him because he's a heroic type. I don't know. There's always arguably rapey vibes from male characters in a lot of movies. It's just, again, part of the structure of things. And mostly it's for narrative namesake. You know, a character is going to be a bit like this because that's just the way they are. But maybe it's just that's how romance worked back then. Maybe that's how this is depicted in this particular kind of era or whatever. And now, as a younger person looking at these kind of films, I'm not going to actively watch Crocodile Dundee and think like, oh man, he's a bad person for, you know, or no, I should say, it's not a bad film because the main character is depicted, you know, slashing a mug with a knife or being transphobic. It's like, yeah, look, he's still not great as a guy in certain elements, but it's also, he's not accustomed to certain types of just ways that the world works, you know? When you're stuck in a certain area for a long period of time, you don't realize how much of the world changes around you until you have to interact with it. And then suddenly your ways seem outdated in contrast, because that's kind of the thing. And that's kind of the thing with that film, because it's a fish out of water film. It's a guy from outback Australia who, you know, hunts crocodiles, I think. At least he's called Crocodile Dundee. He either hunts them or he just has a giddy old time with them, and hangs out with a lot of native Australian characters, and then goes to New York with this girl and has to deal with the New York culture of the 80s, which, lo and behold, was not a good time to be alive. For a lot of different people in New York, it's kind of crazy how people just forget that New York was a piece of shit for a very long time. But thankfully, we have a lot of it captured on celluloid. I highly recommend watching any film pre-1990, pre the Disneyfication of New York, because that place was a shithole. I mean, arguably still is, because it's now just commercialized and looks pretty because of electronic lights and billboards. Hooray for capitalism. So, it becomes an amusing factor to see, again, a fish out of water film, and you can laugh at different aspects to it. Like, if you looked at a modern version of that, you'd have the superhero films. You'd have Thor, Wonder Woman, and how they're taken out of their more alien world to this, what we consider our normal world, and reacting differently to it. Again, in Thor, where he wants another drink, he smashes a fucking, the glass on the floor, because that's just his culture, and that's meant to be a sign of respect. I love this drink so much, I have to break the glass so no one else can taste it, and I want more. And that's great. It freaks everyone else out, because they're like, what the fuck's going on? It's fish out of water. So Crocodile Dundee, being goes to New York, is about to get mugged, and decides to whip out a bigger knife, because he's like, that's a piece of shit, I've got a bigger knife, I'm the bigger person here. Part of the ego complex, but also, hey, again, well, fuck me, a character has character, who'd have thought? But also, yeah, sure, he interacts with certain people in certain ways that aren't currently considered polite. And I don't think they would have been considered polite back in the day either, especially for the minorities. But again, it's because he's from a different world, has a different point of view on things. So you either take it as a scene to laugh at, or you take it as a scene to question his character. So, a character having flawed morals. Fuck me. Imagine that. I can't imagine a movie where my character is not a perfect creature, that is looks perfect, and acts perfect, and talks perfectly. Remember when movies were fun? So, it's one of those things that's like, restricting this stuff from a film like Crocodile Dundee strips him of his character. Whether he becomes a bad-looking guy or not, it doesn't matter. He has a mixed moral ground because of his background, his culture, and the way he's interacting with other culture. Like, things are going to be different, and you need to keep that, especially for its original artistic intent. If people didn't want that in the film originally, they would have cut it out before it got its initial release. And it's just important to note that you shouldn't censor a film in general, no matter what the fuck happens in the film. And this is coming from a guy who owns some films that have some very barbaric fucking natures to them. Well, I was talking to friends the other day about this, and I mentioned the infamous fucking Cannibal Holocaust. I have the 88 film's 4K release, which includes almost every single uncut nature to it. Same as like The Abyss as well. I've got the 4K of that, both of which feature sections with animal torture, with animal brutality, and yet I have a physical copy of it that has as much of that content that was initially filmed and initially released. I think the 88 films is only like 10 seconds removed from it, which is just another animal murder scene, and these are real animals, it's fucked. Like, again, the concept of them and the exploitation in these sequences is not a pretty sight, but it makes the film more of what it is. Questionable ethics are definitely still questionable no matter what, because again, you take The Abyss with the mice drowning scene, it's like, it's an examination narratively of how something works, and, there's a lot of questionable ethics towards it. Could they have used a fake rat? Could they have not? I don't know. It is what it is, but that's how the film is now. It's not for me to fucking decide, or I could just choose to not watch it. There are people who want to do that, go for it, whatever. If you have to look up the parental guide for a movie before you watch it, then that's just your cup of tea. I will blindly watch a movie that will have the most fucked up stuff you can imagine, and then be like, man, I wish I had never have seen this, but now I know. Because that's kind of just how movies were. Like, imagine going to see, Crocodile Dundee when it first came out, and just being like, man, if I had have known that he knifed a mugger, or, groped a person, I would have chosen to not watch this movie. It's like, how would you know? That's just how it goes. We have the internet now, so everything feels different, because you couldn't just know everything at the touch of a button. But it's like, back when this shit came out, you didn't know this stuff. Hi, me in post. I just wanted to note that I think that I should have mentioned the self-censorship notion, that there should be two ways that you can easily combat any of this kind of thing. Is either A, you look up the stuff beforehand and you can self-censor to be like, oh, I don't want to see this in a film, let me just not watch this film. Or, because again, that's why parental guides and stuff exist. Or, if it's an older film that's being newly released on a physical format or whatever, or on streaming, it should just emphasize a note beforehand just to give you an advisory, like, oh, say like the film has flashing lights, or features a sexual assault, or features something like that, like, or it just isn't politically correct to today's standards. Like there are plenty of different physical media releases that emphasize that within the content of the actual product. I know there's a bunch of like Warner Brothers, like Looney Tunes cartoons that are considered, racist and whatever for certain depictions. And to keep the artistic intent, they're like, hey, some of these imagery is like considered, problematic and might upset some viewers. So we're just going to give you a disclaimer here, but we're still going to provide the original artistic intent. And that's all that they need to do. They don't need to cut out these scenes and restrict it for other audiences who are only going to complain and then not buy the product. It's really a very simple thing, and even if people will roll their eyes at, oh, poof, people are so easily triggered, you'd be a lot more insulted as a regular person by seeing that they've cut a film instead of just adding a notation beforehand. Like, it's just it's such an easier fix. And then no one needs to really stress about it, and if they get upset about it, hey, you were warned beforehand, and also, that's just how things are. That's how movies are. They're not meant to cater to everybody. It's an experience. Back to the video. So again, with something like, Cannibal Holocaust, it's like, it's still deranged for people to actively want the most uncut version, because for that, it's like, it's animals being actually murdered and eaten, or just murdered for fun, despite the fact that it actually does narratively relate to how deranged the characters are, which makes it a much more interesting movie. Whether we need as many versions of the scene, whether they could have just faked it, like they faked a lot of the actual human death in the film, yeah, they probably didn't need to actually kill real animals, they could have just faked it, and given how convincing a lot of the human killing is, it kind of gives, you could easily fake that stuff and make it look convincing. Which is bizarre, because when I watched that film, seeing the, real animals getting, murdered and eaten, whatever, and again, it's a natural part of life to murder animals, especially if you eat them, but if it's for fun, which some of the scenes are actually just, the characters are so fucked up, they just kill animals for fun. That stuff's the fucked up stuff, but at least, in contrast to, say, like Wake and Fright, when they're going around hunting the kangaroos, they're doing it for sport. They have a permit to go around. Actually, when they filmed it, they got a permit to go around and kill the kangaroos, because, again, they're considered pests in a lot of outback areas, because there's a fucking lot of kangaroos in this country. And sometimes, yeah, you actually have to, like, decrease the population a little bit, because there's just a lot. But that has its whole body of thing, where it's like, it's unethical yet ethical at the same time. Like, it's unethical of the characters in the film to start doing it, because they're doing it for fun on a drunken rampage. Let's go around and kill a bunch of kangaroos. But when they made the film, they actually got the permit to go around and shoot those kangaroos. Because you had to fucking ask the goddamn government, hey, can we do this in our film? It shows the characters doing this, we're going to show it in this way, but also, it helps your pest problem. So works both hand in hand. The government approves because, hey, it helps us out, we don't have to hire people to do this, and it helps the film out because it gives them footage to use. Crazy. But again, something like Cannibal Holocaust, it gives you the realism of, if they're really doing this to animals, and it's brutal, and it's ugly, and it's not fun to watch, then when you get to the part where humans die in it, you realize it's brutal, and it's uncomfortable, and you don't want to watch it. But you have the realism stake in your head of like, oh, if this stuff here is real, then that stuff there is real. But if you don't know it's real the whole time, then it just looks really convincing. But if you know that it's real for the first half, it makes your brain think that the second half is just as real, because it looks just as real. So, yeah. But again, Cannibal Holocaust is a video nasty in contrast to Crocodile Dundee, one of the most, if not the most, like, I was going to say most popular, I think it had, like, the largest box office to any Australian film ever. I don't know if that's been improved since then, but, it was a fucking hit. And the fact that they're just like, you know what? I think modern audiences are not going to like the fact that, Mick Dundee's a bit of a dickhead in some scenes. It's like, he's not an angel. He's not a perfect person. He's not meant to be. Like, I would actively still buy the 4K if those scenes were in it, not if they were removed. That's why I'm not buying the 4K, and I'm like, a lot of people are not going to buy it because of that. I had a discussion with people who are twice my age, who grew up with the film when it came out, and people who would have shown it to me as a kid, and I did watch it as a kid. And even they were like, oh, it's the snowflake generation, it's your generation saying this and that. I'm like, my generation ain't deciding shit. We don't have any of the fucking power to actually create these edits. This is people twice our age who are looking at, oh, younger people aren't going to like the fact that this guy's a bit of a dickhead in this scene. Let's remove it from the film and then release it on 4K to, oh, look, the audience of the people who watched it when it initially came out. I wish I had a watch here to make it look like I was looking at something, but still. You got to think of audience intent. Like, who's going to actively watch this film on Blu-ray, 4K, streaming, whatever. And the thing is, they're so concerned with newer audiences, younger audiences, who I guess are so easily triggered, yet it's usually older people who complain about people being triggered. There's irony all around. People are different audiences. I don't like generalizations. It's fucking annoying. It's just disrespectful for everyone. Like, not just, oh, I'm triggered because older people think younger people are triggered easily. But I'm like, no, I'm annoyed that everyone thinks that this is from everyone. It's coming from all fucking sides. The monster is inside the house. What people don't understand is that, like, if you got to think of the audience who are going to buy Crocodile Dundee on 4K, and all the people, most of you especially who are watching, because most of my audience are twice my age. I'm 26. Most of my audience are in their 40s and upwards, which is perfectly fine. But you're the kind of people who are going to want to watch this film in the best way possible. And now you're like, fuck, here's a 4K that makes it, meticulously remastered. They've put a lot of legwork in it, a bunch of special features, beautiful set design, and yet they've removed one of the most iconic scenes in Australian cinema history, and then some other stuff. Why would you want to buy that? And everyone's been actively hating the fact that, hey, I'm not going to buy a censored version of this movie. Call it as fancy as you will, an encore cut. You've removed the most iconic scene. You've removed scenes that emphasize the kind of character that the main character is. And it's just stupid that they would do that. And again, all for an audience who probably wouldn't buy the film to begin with. A lot of younger people aren't going to buy a lot of movies to begin with. You got to think of and cater to those audiences who actually like the film, and those audiences who actually want a full, uncut version of the film. Same as, again, for Cannibal Holocaust. That's a Italian exploitation film which is set up as a found footage film, but starts as a documentary about them finding the footage, and it shows them looking through the footage and realizing that these characters, these people, are not good people, and they've done wrongdoings to get a certain type of footage. It becomes a metaphor. Who'd have thought it? So it's one of those factors where audiences want an uncut version of the most brutal, ugly films imaginable because the artistic intent was always there. And there are going to be audiences who don't want that stuff, Do I actively want to see animals getting mutilated on screen? No. But if it's part of a film and it relates to the text, you kind of have to go with it, because that's just sometimes what films do. They will show you things that are not fun to watch, that are unbearable. I don't like seeing films of sexual assault. I hate it. It's really, just a disgusting thing. I'm okay with watching regular sex scenes, because I'm not a weirdo who thinks that sex is weird. Fuck off, younger. See, that's where my criticism of even younger people goes to. That's weird. I don't need Puritanian? Yeah, I don't need that kind of bullshit. Fuck off. But assault scenes, and you realize I'm saying a lot of these words without censoring myself in this video, because I don't give a shit about what YouTube's going to think of this video. See, I'm well aware of censorship in my own videos. You're not going to catch me saying unalived without some sense of irony. And so, I don't like these assault scenes in films. But the thing is, it's a part of the narrative. It's a part of the text. Sometimes it will just happen, and you just got to live with it. And this isn't just like someone groping someone else. This is like full-on, complete assault where it's unbearable to watch, and you hate watching it, and you're just stuck with that. And I've had a couple of films this year already that I've seen in a cinema, not new films, very old films, that were screened, actually at the Cinemaniacs, the film group that I'm part of. And it's ended a couple of films I've watched this year where they've ended with assault scenes. And it's just been vile and graphic and brutal to watch. But it's a part of the impact of the film. It's not just there because, oh, isn't it fun if we just put this in here? No, it's narratively important. You can't just cut that out and be like, and then, Mrs. Goodbar went to Happy Land and there was no issues and she had lived happily ever after. The narrative of the text, the build up to that doesn't work if you remove a scene as brutal and graphic as that. And it's very artistically rendered. I'm talking about Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Fantastic final scene, but fucking awful. So The same goes for like the Gregoraki Teen Apocalypse trilogy. They have sequences like that that are rough to watch, and it's brutal to watch them, and yet, again, part of the text. If it wasn't going to, if there's no artistic intent for it, it wouldn't be there to begin with. And so if you censor this stuff to try to cater to modern audiences aren't going to be able to respect anything that has ever existed. You know, it's that same essence with history of, like, if you edit out history, people are doomed to repeat it. So, like what a certain administration is doing with a lot of their internet databases about certain points of history, by removing that certain point of history, people are going to do that thing again because they won't have a point of reference to, oh shit, this was bad. Let's not do this. Let's do better things and be better people. Or find a way to do something the same but different. You know, you learn from history. And so again, the same goes for art with artistic intent in these films. If this is like the original director being like, yeah, I want these scenes removed because I don't like the way it depicts our character. It's like, but broski, you're the one who put it in to begin with. You can't decide now. You can't George Lucas this bullshit. You know, I don't need to see that, oh, but Han Solo was a good guy. He shot second, which means that he's a better character, even though it was like a split of the hair second. He shot first, for the love of God. He's a scoundrel. It's part of his character. Holy shit. He's not a heavenly guy. He's an asshole. But, you know, holy shit, a man have fucking characteristics, a person have dynamic range to themselves. Not just restricted to men, of course. Women are the same in movies. A whole bunch of different people can just have range to them. They aren't all perfect, and they shouldn't be. Characters are boring if they're perfect. It sucks. Unless they're perfect and get murdered for it in slasher films. Then it's okay. So yeah. So I think, as an end-all be-all, they shouldn't restrict and cut films like this. It's stupid. It's annoying. Audiences are going to complain, old and new. Me, as someone who's younger, who wants to see the original artistic intent of the original vision, I would like to see that. Even if it showcases this character who is meant to be a, I don't know, prestige prime version of what masculinity might be, or what this society deems as the best person in the world, like a Captain America who might actually be secretly a Nazi. Like, sometimes you got to have a little bit of, you know, wiggle room for the character to not be completely perfect. You know, think of your Iron Man if he wasn't also an alcoholic and kind of a dick. You know, if he wasn't like that, we wouldn't like him. He has charm to his character because, you know, he has some morally grey areas. God forbid. And modern audiences aren't going to care about a film if it's recut to purpose their own sensibilities. It's like, people have to grow and adapt with time. And that's why, again, I don't like the argument saying, oh, it's because young people are, you know, snowflakes or whatever. I'm like, no, stop it. Just grow the fuck up. Realize that everyone's complaining about everything and no one can have it perfect. Art is meant to be, you know, critical and analytical and political, and is meant to discuss and represent things that don't align with everyone's fucking values. And that's good. And we shouldn't be cutting that down for someone else's values. Again, it's restricting it for other people's values. I'm like, fuck that. Leave it as it was. Leave it untouched, except a 4K restoration would be great. But just, you know, don't trim it. It's just, if we can get Wake and Fright, a movie which shows just how fucking brutal some people can be, and just how ugly a culture of people can be, then, and yes, again, toxic masculinity. God forbid men be toxic. Shouldn't be, but they are, and it sucks. But if you remove that from that film, you have no film. It's the core essence of the film. And so again, with Crocodile Dundee, you're cutting out scenes that are both iconic and also, sure, it shows him of a man of his own culture, a man of his own time. And culture not exactly being a bright word of, oh, he's a man of valor. No, he has a particular landscape that he's come from, and this isn't reflected in the culture of the place that he's in. Again, fish out of water. And they shouldn't remove these scenes from this. I mean, we should all I think we all basically agree on that notion. It shouldn't take me, a guy who's in his mid-20s, to tell people on the internet that they shouldn't be cutting down films. You know? Again, given that this is an Australian film being released by an Australian company, Madman Entertainment, I wonder whose decision it was to restrict it. Like, is it someone looking at an American political landscape, or maybe it's those people in America who are like, well, look, if we're already going to censor TikTok and the rest of our media and whatever, then we can also cut this film down because it showcases values that don't represent our current modern audience. I'm like, no, current modern audiences are not going to give a shit for a film from the 80s. You know? They don't. So it's like the annoyance of watching any Friday the 13th film where they have some amazing kills but they've cut them out because, oh, it's too graphic. Get fucked. Why do you think people watch those movies? They watch them for people getting, preferably teenagers, getting hacked and slashed. You want that in your slasher movie. You don't want them to cut away for artistic intent, unless that was the artistic intent. You know? I like seeing a guy who's in a wheelchair get his head completely cut halfway between his eyeballs with a machete, because it's cool. It's a fucking amazing effect. Don't cut it out of my fucking movie. It's not a dislike against people who are in wheelchairs. Actually, he's a great character. It sucks that he died. That's why I like the kill so much. So, yeah. They just shouldn't censor movies. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. And in reality, it won't make much sense to the people who are releasing these censored versions of the movies. You know, if a large fan base are going to uproar on Facebook and Instagram, whatever other social platforms, or reviews on the JB website, whatever, to say, they've censored the movie, I don't give a shit if the transfer looks great and the audio is better than it ever has been, it's got great special features, they've cut out iconic parts of the movie, or just necessary vital information to show the kind of character that Mick was. So yeah. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below, and try to not to be too just nasty in general, to generalize that it's because of the snowflakes. Just stop it with that kind of conversation. Grow the fuck up. I think people who have to identify with that just can't identify with themselves personally. So just blame the people releasing it, not the people that it's apparently meant for now. Or, yeah, no, the parent, yeah, no, yeah. I don't know anyone younger than me who the fuck's going to watch Crocodile Dundee. I've got a colleague who just turned 21. He doesn't know what the fuck it is. Never heard of it. So what, you know? He's not going to go out and buy the 4K and then be offended because the character is kind of a piece of shit. God forbid a character have, you know, range and grey morals to them. So, yeah. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.